you and Ken. I'd like Dave and Amanda Wilson to come up too. These are, you see Amanda up here singing, and the family is so gracious and helpful in so many ways, as are so many families. But I wanted to recognize them because they've really stepped up considerably in the last year. And not only have they stepped up, they're stepping out. They're heading on a missions trip in a few weeks to Israel. And it's expensive to get there. They weren't expecting this, but on our behalf, I wanted to give you a little gift. Dave and Amanda, thank you so much for your being a blessing to us, okay? I'd like Brian and Connie to come up as well. Brian and Connie, I had the opportunity to have dinner. Brian and Connie invited me and Barry over, and some of the most interesting people you would ever meet in your life when you hear the story that emanates underneath the roof of that home, just absolutely fascinating. Their sacrifice, their contribution here through the year is made all the more special when I think of how Brian suffers in so many ways with health issues that you'd never know it. Handles it so gracefully and is such an overcomer. And I just wanted you to know that we know, and I wanted you to know that we love you. And there's a gift from the congregation for both of you guys. Okay, God bless you.
Thank you, sir.
Sure. I just wanted to do that at the outset. This evening, what I want to do is, in effect, a kind of dinner theater. You've all heard of the Last Supper. Maybe you've seen pictures of Leonardo da Vinci's Last Supper that celebrates the Last Supper, thus the term Last Supper. And what I wanted to do is afford you the opportunity to experience some. And this can be part of your Holy Week moment as the world today remembers Jesus on the cross, and then on Sunday remembers him up from the grave. And I don't know what the cross means to you. Barry and I were talking about that on the way here this evening. It can mean different things to different people. I see Valerie Hoff back there. She felt the cross big time this year with her passing of her husband, Tom. I see Pat at the other end of the table, who her husband suffered just a stroke, and it just so changes life. Different things can happen to different people. I was, beating the bongos behind Debbie Skinner, and her husband went on to his reward not too long ago, and life has a way of serving up insults. As we make our journey from the womb to the tomb, sometimes, again, just life serves it up. And I don't know where you find yourself right now. You might find yourself in something of a resurrected state, characterized by ecstasy, and or you might find yourself in a cross state, life characterized by just suffering, just pressure that you're carrying gracefully as you're making your journey through life. But I hope that you'll get something out of this evening that'll put a little fuel, to help you burn a little brighter and maybe have a little more hope that you wouldn't otherwise have. I'm not saying you're walking around hopeless, but we all carry a cross in life. It's just the nature of human experience. And, it's good to know with the Lord that there's a victory that overcomes life circumstances. And I want to encourage you just to keep carrying on. I want to tell a little story. In the 8th century BC, Homer told a classic tale that was very famous amongst the Greeks. It was Ulysses who returned from the Trojan War. And as he was there on his vessel that he was commanding, he was passing an island that was noted for its ability to ruin mariners. There were what were referred to as sirens. You heard the term siren, the way it's used in modernity, but these voices, these sirens, so-called, would come from the island, these beautiful voices. And it was said that people couldn't resist them. So mariners, as they're making their way in proximity, they hear the voices, and they couldn't resist the temptation of the voices. And so they would get closer and closer, the melody, the beauty, they just knew there was something good, but they didn't realize they were going to their own demise. Ulysses was familiar with the story, and he came up with a strategy to get the better of it. Of course, this is a mythological story, but there's a principle associated with it I want to connect to the cross. What he did is, for all of his crew, he put wax in their ears so they couldn't hear the voices. And what he did with himself, because he wanted to hear the voices, he had his crew tie him with ropes to the mast. So he wanted to hear the voices, but when you read the story, he is so enticed by them. He's struggling. He's wounding his body, because he just so much wants to go to those voices. But eventually, because of the strategy that I just described, and he was left something with his bruises. Sometimes it's good to be attached to a mast, that is a cross. It doesn't always feel good when one's experiencing it, but individuals can come out the other end of it successful. I'll share a personal testimony in that regard, and then I'll get more to the issues at hand, but I want to give a little word of encouragement with an anecdotal story. I'm 66 and a half, but I decided some years ago I wanted to go back to school. And I was fortunate not just to go to school, but to get into Cambridge University, which is one of the world's elite research institutions. And I got there because, among other things professionally, I'm a police officer, I'm a manager, I run the police academy, the trainings for the Dallas College system. So I run a few police academies, among other things. Cambridge University has a program in applied criminology and police management, and it's for police executives. So I applied to it, and I was accepted, and so I had to go back and forth across the Atlantic. It's not an online program for these classes. Now, everyone in the class is much younger than me, number one. Number two, I don't understand everything the professors are saying because those British accents can get interesting. Not only do I not understand everything they're saying, but because I'm older, I can't hear as well anyways, and I'm just too proud to get a hearing aid. Because, I know I'm old, but I don't want to advertise, I'm just a little too snotty. I don't want to wear the aid. So at one level, I had trouble hearing. On the other hand, even when I could hear, I could barely understand because the level was so high that I'm listening, I'm there, and I don't understand half of what they're saying in the lectures. And then with the reading, and oh my God, the reading was voluminous. It's not just you go to a normal university, you get one thick textbook. I got 100 things to read for everyone. Really, that's not an exaggeration. It was just miserable at one level, and I could barely understand the reading. I could barely understand what they were saying. I wound up taking a statistics course because there's so much data just so I can better understand what I'm reading and what they're saying. And I was talking to a friend of mine who's here who's a psychiatrist, and I don't know about you, but I find it helpful to have a friend who's a psychiatrist. My wife's glad I have one too, I think. Anyway, and he said, well, Jeff, he says, in medical school, do you know what, because I was struggling, my grades weren't what I wanted them to be. Kept trying and throwing myself against it. It was just so hard. Everyone in the class was much younger, and it's just, and I couldn't break through the pack, and Dr. Unsel said, well, Jeff, in medical school, do you know what they call the guy who graduates at the bottom of the class? I said, what do they call him? He said, doctor. In other words, just get through it, Jeffrey. So what I did is I kept just my eye on the ball, kept working at it. I'd hand in assignments, I'd get discouraged. I got word this week that my dissertation, and it's a graduate degree, it's a research degree, that my dissertation received the top score at Cambridge University in the program. And that Barry and I are going to be going back to England in July for graduation, and I'm going to be graduating with distinction. Now, I said all that to say this, not that you should think more of me than you might otherwise do, but the point is, sometimes it's good to be in something that's painful. You're not happy with it, but you keep your focus on, you keep moving forward. And I can tell you, I've come out of the trial a better human being after the last few years. And again, I don't know what your life is all about right now. No one gets a perfect hand. You know, life's a poker game. No one gets 4 aces, and you're going to sit there and relax. And you're going to once you throw the hand, you're going to collect all the money on the table. No one gets 4 aces. We all have to play the game with whatever cards we're dealt. And sometimes it can get a little disconcerting, but I want to encourage you to hang in there. Amen? Okay. I want to just say a prayer real quick, and then we'll get to the business at hand. You didn't come to hear my story. We came here to hear Jesus, and I get that. Lord, come before you, bless your name, and thank you for this time together, Father. I pray you make it meaningful, that we can understand the Lord's Supper in a new light, and I ask this in Yeshua's name, in Jesus' name. Amen. Dinner theater it is. You'll see on your table you have something that Susan Forsey, that young lady who in the teal shirt, who came up and welcomed everybody at the outset. That is going to be Lieutenant, Captain, whatever, Forsey. She is finishing up seminary. Just really in a few weeks, she's going to be a chaplain in the military. So she's interning here now. And she put together this, what's called a Haggadah. And that if you're not familiar with the story, then I want you to take this and just use it to familiarize yourself with the story a little better. I'm not going to be following this verbatim because not everybody has one. But if you'd like to learn a little more about it, just take this with you as you leave. What I want to do to look at the Jewish Passover is use the Newer Testament. You're looking at a first century document. And what I want to do is pulling from the Last Supper. I want to, pivot to issues that you'll discover if you look at the Haggadah. What I'm going to do this evening is explain a little of the Passover story, explain the foods you have in front of you. Then we're going to eat. We're going to break for dinner. Then we're going to come back for some worship. Brian and Connie are going to come and do a special, and the worship team. And then I'm going to come back and we're going to look at communion. Because, what we call communion or the Eucharist or the Lord's Supper, it all comes from the Jewish Passover. The Passover, the Last Supper was a Jewish Passover meal. Jesus was a Jew. The disciples were Jewish. The story took place in Judea. The New Testament's a story about a Jew named Jesus who preached to Jewish people from the Jewish scripture in the Jewish language in the Jewish homeland. And there were those Jews who accepted Jesus and there were those Jews who did not. And those who did accept Jesus didn't say, well, I used to be Jewish, now they become a Baptist or a Catholic or a Lutheran or Assemblies of God. They lived as Jews who accepted Jesus. And Jesus was Jewish. And the Last Supper was a Jewish Passover. And you probably heard about Passover, even if you never experienced it. You would know, Christians have special events like Easter and Christmas, and Jews have Passover and other things. That Passover is a famous story, and Jesus is celebrating the Passover with his disciples. And it was in the context of celebrating the Passover when Jesus points to a particular cup of wine and a piece of bread and says, eat and drink. And the name of the game here this evening is to really zero in on that and understand that moment. Usually when someone explains communion, it's a priest talking in a church or a pastor, delivering the elements, the deacons or whatever, or people coming up to the railing to take communion. But what I want to do is look at communion in context here. I think a text without a context is a pretext. It's important to look at something in its original moment. And with that in mind, what I want to do is use the Matthean Gospel, the Gospel of Matthew, and I want to work through it. And I want you to understand the Last Supper and the process of so doing. So if you have a Bible or if you have an app, I'd like you to go to Matthew chapter 26, please. And I'll pick up in verse 17. Now on the first day of unleavened bread, the disciples came to Jesus saying, where do you want us to prepare for you to eat the Passover? And the Last Supper was a special meal like you have here. And it's not a fast food gig, there's special preparations for it. So Jesus was a Jew, the disciples were Jewish, and they say, hey boss, where are we going to do it? What's the plan? And Jesus didn't say, oh, forget that Passover stuff, you're Christians now. He didn't say that. Forget the Jew thing, it's a new thing that's coming, baby. He didn't do that. It's interesting that the Last Supper is precipitated by, they come up to Jesus and say, hey, where do you want us to prepare for you to eat the Passover? It's a special meal. And Jesus said, go into the city to a certain man and tell him, the rabbi says, my time is near. At your house I am to keep the Passover with my disciples. And the disciples did as Jesus ordered them, and they prepared the Passover. Jesus had prearranged with some guy to utilize the house, the room, the upper room for this first communion, for this Passover moment. The disciples didn't know it, but they come up to Jesus, hey, where are we going to do it, man? We need a big place, there's 12 of us here and all that. He says, look, you go into town, go down the street, make a left on Main Street, and you'll see a guy there, and just say, hey, look, the rabbi, it was set up in advance. So they do that. Jesus sends them on, and they run into the guy, and then what happens is they set up the meal. It says in verse 20, now, when it was evening, Jesus was reclining at the table with the 12. Now, when it says in the text they were reclining at the table, it's not accidental. At a Jewish Passover meal, everyone reclines. You have a pillow. It's by design. Now, when I was growing up, I'd sit at the table, and my parents would always say, sit up straight, sit up straight. But at a Passover, it's no recline. Be a slouch, be lazy, it's horrible. But the purpose behind it is, at this particular meal, you're going to eat it as though you were royalty, as though you were a king or a queen, you're an elite, and the reason for that is rather telling. And that is, the Passover story recalls a cross moment in Old Testament history that was a crossroad, pun intended. The cross moment is, if you're marginally familiar with the Older Testament, you know that the Hebrew people were in bondage for hundreds of years in Egypt. The whip. And I don't know if you've ever been oppressed by people and circumstance. It was relentless. And it went on door to door from generation to generation. And these people were not able to extricate themselves from their bondage. They could not get the better of it. But they cried out to heaven. They said, Lord, please, generation to generation, absolute misery. Relentless. It's all they knew. They were enculturated into a difficult life. I don't know if you've ever run into people, they're just enculturated into a miserable kind of existence. Just circumstances have been so oppressive so long, it affects their overall inner disposition, their equilibrium. They just made peace with living with a kind of disequilibrium. You have pain in the back, whatever, you go to a chiropractor. Susan's husband, Marcus, is studying to be a chiropractor. You know what it's like, you're kind of out of kilt, you want to get it. But some people just walk out of kilt. And if you're walking out of kilt, you can feel it. But it just becomes home after a while. It's just what it is. Life can serve up disequilibrium, and we can get hardened in it, and it affects our overall disposition and our attitude toward people and circumstances in the future. Well, the Hebrew people were just in servitude for decades and decades and decades, but they cried out for relief, and God sent a redeemer, Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses, who shows up, and there's a confrontation with Pharaoh, and there's the Exodus story that ensues. There's going to be plagues. Moses is going to tell Pharaoh, let him go. Pharaoh's going to say, ain't going to happen. So there's back and forth. So there's plagues. In Hebrew, Don Sefardei Akinim Orab Dereshakin Orab Arbachoshech Machas Bachoros. Blood, frogs, lice, vermin, plague, plague, plague. The last of those plagues, the slaying of the firstborn, according to the literature, and I'm going back to Exodus, the Lord says, here's the deal. Get yourself a lamb without spot or blemish, and slay the lamb, and take the blood of that lamb, and put it on the doorpost of your house. And I'm going to come through Egypt as the angel of death. And when I see the blood, I'm going to pass over. Death isn't going to come to your house. I'm going to pass over it. Thus the term Pesach, or Passover. I'm going to pass over it. And the Passover then happens. You know, the Egyptians are just, they've already been beaten up by 9 plagues. The 10th was a knockout punch. Pharaoh said, get out of here. Zayah goes, go, enough already. And then they run out of Egypt. But then Pharaoh changes his mind. You have the story of the Egyptian army in hot pursuit. And they were cornered. You have I don't know if you've ever been in a place in life where circumstances have you cornered. Just cornered. You have the Red Sea in front of you, and then you have an army in pursuit behind you. You're stuck. It's the proverbial between a rock and a hard place. And what happens in the narrative is a miracle. Nesh Gadol Hoyashem is said with another holiday. A great miracle happened there, that the waters split and the Hebrews go through, the Egyptians come in hot pursuit, and the waters collapse on them. Thus the song that Barry and the group sang, I will sing unto the Lord, for he has triumphed gloriously, the horse and the rider thrown into the sea. It's verbiage that comes from Exodus in the aftermath of the Exodus story. Well, the name of the game at the Passover is Dor Lador, from generation to generation. Hebrew people in the Hebrew Bible are commended to remember this moment, this redemptive moment. It's a political moment. It's a social moment. It's a moment that changed the trajectory of people's lives. And you know, in as much as in the Christian calendar, there are things that we remember. And I say we because I believe in Jesus. I am of Jewish extract, and thus sharing some of my culture with you because it's rooted in biblical, it's tethered to biblical moorings. But you know, in the Christian world, there's certain events to remember: Easter, you know, the birth, the resurrection, the death. There's certain things that it's commended to memory. Well, this is the principal event in the Hebrew Bible that's commended to memory, and that is that God is able to bring about great deliverance, thus the Exodus. And sometimes it's good to know there might be someone within the sound of my voice that needs to hear that, because you might be wondering. I know when I was at Cambridge, I was like, my God, why has that forsaken me? It was so hard. Those people were so brutal. You know, I've been a professor for years. I went to SMU for a master's and a doctorate. They're tough, but they're not tough like Cambridge tough. Those people are brutal. You know, oh Lord, deliver me. First I was so excited. Oh, I wondered, what does it take to get into Cambridge? And then, what does it take to get out alive? You know? First I wanted to get in, then I just wanted to get out, tell you the truth. In any case, sometimes in life, yeah, Jay, I remember him struggling with his dissertation too, enough already. Sometimes it serves it up. Well, the Passover, with these foods here that you have in front of you, Jews use the foods to retell the story. At every Passover meal, you know, when they asked Jesus, where do you want us to prepare the Passover? Preparing the Passover didn't just mean getting tables and chairs and ordering out from Chick-fil-A. You know, there's special foods. It's not drive-through at Wendy's. You know, there are special foods that are prepared. And you see a table in front of you. Well, obviously you see a table. There's a Seder plate on the table in front of you. There's certain elements on the plate, one of which is the shank bone of a lamb. At every Jewish Passover, there's a shank bone of a lamb. And the shank bone is a reminder of the Passover lamb that was slain. Actually, when the temple stood in Jesus' day, everyone would eat lamb at Passover. But there's no longer a temple that's standing in Jerusalem, so people just have a shank bone of a lamb there. It's a reminder of the lamb. The lamb, it was the sacrifice of that lamb. It was the application of the blood of that lamb. The lamb was the agent, the blood of the lamb was the agent that facilitated the great redemption. It was taking the blood from that spotless lamb and applying it to the house. And that's what brought about the redemption. The angel of death passed over, they were free, others died, and that was the catalyst for the new beginning. Now, these foods here serve as a reminder of that. There's the shank bone of the lamb. There's this karpas, or parsley, that's at every Jewish Passover table. Jesus would have had it. And the parsley is a reminder of a paintbrush. You know, they collected the blood of the lamb, and they put it in a basin. And you know what it's like. You paint, you stick the brush in there, and you smear it. Jews will have this at Passover. It's just not decorative parsley, as you would find at a fine meal. It serves as a reminder. Everything serves as a reminder of the Passover. And here, the parsley is dipped at Jewish Passovers in salt water. And the salt water is at every Jewish table. It's a reminder of two things. Number one, it's a reminder of the tears that were shed in slavery. A reminder of the tears. The idea is that Jews will dip it and eat it. It's a reminder of the bitterness, one of the reminders of the tears. It also serves as a reminder of the Red Sea that split. But speaking of tears, there's this, you'll see this white, it's called Moror. Let's see if I can hold it up here without making a mess. Let me just say Moror. The word mar is the Hebrew word for bitterness. Mar is bitterness. Moror is bitterness. When you eat this, it is supposed to be extremely bitter. I used to enjoy watching my mother eat it at the Passover Seder. You know what it's like when, let's say okay, I'm a little sick, but Randall will talk to me later about why. My unresolved issues with my mother, if you're taking notes. You ever order like a sandwich and waiter or waitress says, do you want anything on it? You say, yeah, I'll have some hot peppers. And so you get the sandwich, you take a bite, and you go, oh my God, that was more than I bargained for on the hot side. And then, but Moror is supposed to be that experience on steroids. And the reason why it would be fun to watch Mom eat it, because what happens is you eat it, it jars you, and then the body reacts, and you start to sweat, and you'd watch the makeup bubble. Cheap makeup starts to slide around a little bit, you know, because underneath it, I mean, you put the makeup on the face and everything, but underneath it, then from the pores, you get this. I just thought I'd share that with you ladies. I don't know how hot they made it for us today, but it'll be interesting. But the name of the game is, at a Jewish Passover meal, people eat this stuff, and they do this. And it's a reminder of the bitterness. There's 4 cups of wine that are poured at a Passover. I'm just going to be interested in the 3rd cup, and I'll get to that later. But the different cups of wine that Jews drink at a Passover, Jesus included, mean something. And you might recall Jesus took wine and he says, take, drink. And we're going to see what that is exactly. Jews, there's different reasons why perhaps the Passover holiday has been so lauded amongst Jewish people. One of which is because we get 4 cups of wine. And if you look at Jewish Passover wine, it has more alcohol in it than regular wine, so it contributes to why we seem to like the holiday so much. At the Jewish Passover, there's matzah. Jay, could you hand me a piece of matzah, please, there from the table, just one? You might recall, now, if you're looking at the matzah, and this is unleavened bread, it's what Jews eat during the Passover. Now, this is regular kosher matzah. And if you look at it, you'll see that it's striped and pierced. Now, remember, during the Passover, Jesus took the bread and gave it to his disciples and said, take, eat, this is my body. And what he's giving them is material that has stripes on it and pierce marks. They don't realize that Jesus is going to be flogged in reasonably short order. Before the sun is high in the sky the next day, he's going to be flogged, he's going to be pierced, he's going to be on Calvary's cross. Now, what I want to do, and it'll come more toward the end, again, what I want to do here is just look at just some of these particulars with the Passover, but this communion story, this is my drink this cup, eat this bread. It's standard fare at a Jewish Passover. At every Jewish Passover meal, all around the world. And Jews are all celebrating Passover now. I got a Chag Sameach from a friend of mine, an Orthodox Jewish rabbi in Israel. Happy Passover. He'd be a lot happier if I would give up this whole Jesus gig, but it isn't what it is. We're friends after all these years. But it's a big to-do. At a Jewish Passover, everybody's passing around this bread and drinking the cup, and I just really want you to understand that moment. Going back to the story here in the Matthean text, 2 Timothy, in Matthew, chapter 26, verse 20. Now it was at evening, and Jesus was reclining at the table with the 12. In verse 21, as they were eating, he said, I tell you, one of you will betray me. And being very sorrowful, they began each one to say to him, I am not the one, am I, Master? And he replied, the one who dipped his hand in the bowl with me, he's the one who will betray me. And then you go on, and Jesus says, one of you is going to betray me. They say, who, boss? Well, the one who's going to dip his hand in the bowl is going to betray me. So Judas does that. But if you look at the Passover, if you look at the story, they still can't figure out that Judas is the bad guy. We know he's the bad guy in retrospect. But you go, this is stupid. One of you will betray me. Who, boss? The one who dips his hand in the bowl. He's the one. But then afterwards, when Judas, if you look at the Johannine Gospel, the Gospel of John, when Judas does that, he leaves. And people think, he's just going out to run an errand. They can't figure out he's the bad guy. The reason why is because what we call dipping in the bowl, there are all these foods here, and everybody is dipping stuff and tasting and the like. So just saying the guy who's going to betray me is the one who has his fingers on the plate. It's an answer, but it's not a real definitive answer in their mind. And it's interesting, by the way. Jesus says, one of you will betray me. And they say, Lord, am I going to be the one? I think that's a fascinating response, and there's a good word there. It's not my job really to preach. He said, one of you will betray me. In verse 22, they began each one to say to him, I'm not the one, am I? The reason why I think that's telling is we walk around so pompous so often, like we're perfect, we're Christian, we're better than these other people, because, apparently they didn't have that attitude. When he said, look, one of you is going to screw up big time, they're going, am I going to be the one? Am I going to be? In other words, they're cognizant that they have the potential within them, that the seeds of their own demise are resident within them. The reason why I say that is because, you can call me reverend, rabbi, doctor, professor, commander, whatever titles you want. I'm a man. And I'm fully aware of the fact I can deteriorate just as any other man can. And it's a game to think otherwise for any of us. You hear about this minister, this great minister fell, ran off and had an affair with his secretary. I can't believe he did that. Well, I can. Because I have the same capacity within me. Now, if I have confessions, I'll either talk to my psychiatrist or look for a priest. I'm not coming here to tell you about my problem. The point is that there's something really good about being honest with the self. Truth of the matter is we all have a cross to pick up. We all have a fight. My wife posted a little thing on her Facebook. I believe it was you, Barry, recently. A proverb, the heart knows its own bitterness and no stranger shares its joy. We I mean, if I took my shirt off, there's wounds. Now, I'm saying that figuratively. I don't have stab wounds in me. But the reality is, we've all been beat up a little bit. And sometimes it's easy to say, I need a drink. Sin, if it wasn't so good, people wouldn't be so attracted to it. Look, I need to take my mind off my mind. There's different ways that different people can do different things in response to life's insults. And I think it's fascinating that these who knew Jesus personally, who drank water turned into wine, who saw him walk on water, experienced the miracles, these people still recognize. When Jesus says, listen, one of you is going to screw up with a capital S, they go, hey, boss, it's not going to be me, is it? Well, the story goes on, and what they do is they eat, they partake in these various foods. I want to give you the opportunity to taste some of this stuff. I know you're dying to get to the Moror anyway. I know that everything inside of you. There's other foods here. There's something called charoset. It's brown. It's this brown stuff right here. It's a mixture of apples and honey and nuts. People go, what's that all about? That's a reminder of mortar, bricks. People say, Jews, they're all doctors and lawyers. Listen to me, we used to be into construction. Listen to me, construction, it's making bricks. It's the way we did it. You look at Exodus, hundreds of years, we're just these great brick makers. That's why you go to Egypt today. The pyramids are still standing. Why is that? Because they were made by Jews. I was only kidding. Still there and everything else. Construction was our gig. Now I'm taking a little bit of liberty there, what you have in the biblical text, we're not manufacturing pyramids, but it's mud bricks that they're struggling to make, and we eat these foods. Why don't you all get a little bit of matzah here, and I'll let you do the goodies first. Let's do the mud bricks. And I want you to taste the bricks. And again, remember, the name of the game here is to just go back in time. These are little tastes I'm going to give you, that's all. And then Donna. Can you get Donna up here? Come on up here for a second. I want Donna to come here. We'll do a little bit of tasting. And then I want Donna to give us instructions about how we're all going to get the main meal. So what we're going to do is sample some of these little goodies, and then we're going to actually break for a meal. But the real important thing, the super duper important thing is after the meal. So does everyone have a little piece of matzah and some, let me hear you say charoset. Charoset. See, the women hate to say that because it's a guttural, and you're afraid you're going to spit in that. It's just so unladylike. Charoset. By the way, I see my favorite baker's here tonight. Haven't seen her for a while. Oh my God, when this woman used to come, people didn't come here for my teaching. They came here for her pastries. When she left, attendance went down 70%. Came for the food. Everybody have? Okay, let's go. Enjoy. That's not so bad. That's tasty, sweet, and but when you look at it, again, mud, bricks. I know you want the Moror, so let's all get a nice heaping mound of Moror. Let's all eat it together, because I want to enjoy your faces. We cops, we're all a little corrupt and weird, and just to watch you suffer for a minute. My psychiatrist is back there. He can help me work through this later, but don't eat it till I say. And I don't want weenies in the room. Okay, Jose's got himself a big amount. When I look at Jose, what he has, Someone better get out their cell phone. After he eats it, you might have to call 911. I don't know how hot it is. Is it good and hot? Okay, Donna says it's really hot. Good. Ladies? No, look, what a wimp. I was so nice to you. I went over to your table. I visited. I was nice. I was social, and you can't believe, there you go. We're going to have to call 911 on her. Listen, I want everyone to have a heaping amount, except for those drop-dead gorgeous girls with the bunny, the bunny things. I don't want them suffering. Every other woman suffers. Are you ready? L'chaim, bottoms up. You can't drink anything afterward. Hey, you, don't pour that. Do not drink. That's a sin. It's coming. It's coming. You know how they say on those YouTube videos, wait for it? I waited for it, Donna. It didn't come. Donna loves you. She's in charge of the Moror. Donna, you're fired. Donna, you're fired. Not hot enough. I gave her a little check at the beginning. She did so much work. Don't bother cashing it. I'm putting a stop payment on it. Next year, I need a new volunteer to get the Moror. But let's give it up for Donna, by the way. She is so much nicer than I am. Donna, come on up here and tell us what you want to do with the food. Now, what I want you to do is just enjoy a nice meal. But really, everything that I've said so far is prolegomena. It's prologue. Really, there's a real home run at the end. And it's not that I'm saying I'm a real slugger, but there's something that is so profound that's coming. So enjoy your meal now, and then to be.
Okay, we're going to eat now, and the way